As we are all waiting for the appeal decision by the commissioner, Roger Goodell, on Tom Brady and his role in Deflategate, the oxygen in the room, if you will, was filled up by Mike Pereira, our longtime friend and NFL and Fox Sports rules analyst, joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. You broke some news over the weekend, Mike.
I feel like a little mini Jay Glazer or something like that.
Yeah, be careful, because, you know, Jay's got some moves here.
I out-scooped Jay Glazer.
So you found out what the NFL is going to institute in terms of preparation of footballs, the security of the footballs prior to the game, and then also what to do with a football that is handed to them below or above the PSI level. Walk me through, Mike, what you learned.
Yeah, well, what
weekend.
The referees were told, and it hasn't been released publicly yet by the league, but what the referees were told was this was what they were going to do. They were going to increase the number of footballs that had to be presented to them in the locker room before the game, 24 by each team. They were going to check the pressure of each of the footballs, number the footballs, note the pressure to the corresponding footballs, and record all of that information. And then under the jurisdiction of a security rep, a league security rep, they would walk the balls out on the field, and then in selected games, they would do some random halftime checking. They'd bring them back into the locker room, not every game, but random games, bring them back into the locker room, recheck the pressure of the original 12 balls that were sent for each team, then put those aside, bring the backup balls out, the second set of 12, play with those, and then you could always bring them in and recheck the pressure after the game was over, too. So it's really quite a process of tracking the pressure of all the footballs in selected games and keeping them very closely under your control as officials with your kicking ball coordinator and a league security rep. And, it's going to be quite a process.
And then what happens at halftime?
Well, at halftime, what you do, if you get the balls, you'll remeasure them. You'll record the measurement against the original measurement that you same guy will do it, by the way, using the same gauge, by the way. Mm-hmm. And they'll record that information, fill it out on a report, and then retire those balls. They won't take those balls out. So if there is a question with any of them, then they'll have them to check, later on. They'll use the backup balls because now balls have to submit 24 footballs. And so you'll take another set of brand new footballs out to the field to be used.
Mike Pereira joining me here on the Rich Eisen Show. So what happens if a football is handed to an official, it's 12 PSI or 14? What happens?
Well, I mean, what happens is if he gets that football in the locker room before the game, and it is another change, if a ball's overinflated, let's say to 14, they'll deflate it to 13.0. If it's underinflated to 11 point, let's say it's 11.5, they'll inflate it to 13. So if it's outside the limits when they get the ball before the game, then they'll take it to 13.0 pounds per square inch. During the game, not any change because the referee's still going to have his mark on the ball to where, he is marked from his pregame inspection that the ball is now improved. So they'll just They'll make sure that ball has that mark on it, and I'm sure they'll probably squeeze it a little tighter just to see if they can tell if there's any discernible difference in the pressure. But in all likelihood, if you're dealing with a half a pound of pressure, they're not going to feel that anyway.
Now, what about once the balls are taken out 10 minutes prior to the game? Now what happens in that 10-minute period?
So
Mike?
In that 10-minute period, the security under the jurisdiction of the league security rep, they are given to the ball boys on the sideline at that point, and the balls that are not used will be put in the secured area of the replay monitor that's on the sideline, and they will be held there. So,
is this better, Mike?
I think it's an overreaction. I mean, I get the fact that what happened in New England and the decision that we're waiting to get is obviously serious. But I think the one thing that we do know is that New England wasn't the lone wolf when it comes to something like this. That balls had been tampered with before. Now, how much effect does it have in the game? I think that's certainly up for debate. But, to me, when you go this far, it's reminiscent to me, Rich, with the foreign substance issue where players were putting things on their body, silicones on their body that made it hard on the inside to grab a jersey. And, the rules said you couldn't do that, but they kind of continued doing it. So what did we do? We had to send, and still do today, send 2 officials into each locker room before the game and pat down 4 randomly selected players 5 minutes before the game to check their uniforms. We do it again at halftime. An overreaction, even then I thought yes, but I will say one thing, that there's no longer any silicone that are on people's jerseys, so it acted more of a deterrent. Now, this will do the same thing. My only concern is when you have to measure, remeasure, and the officials have to do it, remeasure 24 balls at halftime, you don't have time. I mean, by the you got a 12-minute halftime. By the time you get there into the locker room, there's probably 10 minutes left, and then you have to be at the team's locker rooms to give them a 2-minute warning. So you only have about 5 to 6 minutes in the locker room, and you've been out there for a while. You probably got to take a pee, for God's sakes, and there's hardly time for that. Now you got to stick needles and balls.
Mike, we've already seen you just take the footballs in the bathroom with you.
Yeah, well,
there's precedence for that, right, Mike?
That's true, but that's easier just to put a little needle and let it go for a little bit. But when you put the gauge in and have to measure each one and then record it on a piece of paper, it's a longer process. And they did that, last year in the New England-Indianapolis game. They were required. They came in and told them to measure all of New England balls at halftime, the 11 that were still there, which is why there were no footballs out on the field when New England got the second half kickoff. And when they went for the first down play, they didn't have a football. They didn't have a New England football and had to wait for the bag to be brought out on the field, and we probably had a minute or so delay. It's on those games where this whole random checking process takes place, it's going to put some time restrictions on the officials that are going to make it tough at halftime.
Are you at an officiating convention right now? Is that where you are?
There was like 600 of us here on Saturday.
Wow. What's that like?
In St. Louis, it's called the National Association of Sports Officials. 21,000 officials are a member of this organization, and we have an annual summit every year, and this year it's in St. Louis. And the fun part of it is that tonight we're going to go see the Reds take on the Cardinals here in St. Louis. And I've always wanted to watch a game in St. Louis because these fans here are baseball fans. They're just incredible.
Look at you. You're a homer. You're catering to the fans there.
I cater to you, too, when I'm there in the studio.
Mike, is there like a photo booth where you all go under the hood and smile? Is there like for at the convention for a keepsake for all of you guys?
Well, we've done that before. We did bring replay equipment and let people stick their head in and see if they could make decisions on plays, and we found out that they had just as tough a time as the officials have making the right decision. But that's
Mike,
another story.
Thanks for calling in. We'll chat soon.
See you soon.
You bet. That's Mike Pereira, Fox Sports.
The Rich Eisen Show, weekdays at noon Eastern. On Audience.